Hello, NBA fans, and welcome back to another episode of the NBA The Week That Was. It's been 7 months since my last video. I made it about the Hawks, but I'm back now. I took a long break, missed the whole playoffs, a lot of free agency, but I thought now was a good time to make my return. I'm going off to college in 10 days, and I want to get back into a consistent recording schedule as I continue on. So, starting today, I promise I'll be making a lot more videos on this channel. Today, I'll be talking about the Donovan Mitchell blockbuster that just went down and really just changed the balance of the Eastern Conference in my opinion. I'll be talking about this trade from 3 points of view. We have the Cavs, who of course acquired Mitchell. Then we have the Jazz, who now have a boatload of picks. And then the Knicks, the team that I thought Mitchell was 100% going to. But I think this is a blessing in disguise for them that they ended up without Mitchell and have the roster going in with their core being Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett. So let's get right into it with the Cavs' point of view first. It's been just over 4 years since LeBron James left the Cavs to join the Lakers, and I thought the Cavs are going to be in purgatory for much longer than they've been. And I mean, it's hard when you're a market like Cleveland, with all due respect. No one really wants to go there. So you'd have to build through the draft and shrewd trades, which is tough to do in today's NBA, but I think GM Kobe Altman has done a wonderful job in the way he's had some misfires with some guys like Colin Sexton, who ended up being a good part of the biggest part of this trade besides Donovan Mitchell, of course. Lauri Markkanen was questionable. And, Cleveland with their front office, some decisions like Anthony Bennett, Tristan Thompson wasn't the best pick. So they've had some misfires for sure, but Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen, their core, have all been just great moves by the front office. They of course drafted Garland, even though they drafted Sexton the year before that, which was a questionable move at the time, but Garland paid off, being an all-star this year, averaging 21 and 8 as just a third-year point guard, which is just really good. He's like Trae Young, one of the best players in the NBA. All bias aside, really getting into that Harden trade was just a stroke of brilliance by Kobe Altman, because they had nothing to do with it, but then the Rockets didn't really want to bother with paying Allen the next year. So Cleveland's like, we'll take him. They just had to give up the 30th pick in the draft, and they got a guy who was an all-star last year, locked up for $100 million over 5 years, one of the best centers in the NBA. And then Evan Mobley. The draft luck fell their way. It has to happen for every franchise. Jalen Green and, of course, Cade Cunningham went before him, but Evan Mobley is looking like probably one of the best players in this draft class. He is going to be so good. He has that handle at 7 foot. The offensive potential is limitless. He's already one of the best defensive big men in the NBA, in my opinion. So with that core, Cleveland really thought, now's our time to make our move. Again, they had acquired some good assets through trades. They had a lot of cap space, and they knew that these three guys locked up. Evan Mobley is still on a rookie deal for the next 3 years. It's like the NFL, you have a star quarterback like the Chargers had Justin Herbert. He's on his rookie contract right now, so they're like, let's capitalize, spend a lot of money. I think that's what the Cavs did with this move. So to recap the trade, the Cavs traded Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and Ochai Agbaji, the guy they drafted in the lottery this year, along with 3 first-round picks and 2 first-round pick swaps for Donovan Mitchell, the only guy that they got back. Now, how do I feel about this move for Cleveland? I think it's a perfect fit, basketball-wise. The one weakness that I'll talk about later is the defense, but offensively, you have Garland, who's already such a good creator. Now you got Mitchell, who's going to be the secondary, or it's a 1A, 1B sort of situation with ball handling. Mitchell is just so electric in the way he can just drive and just get past anyone. He's so quick. His first step is so quick. He has a handle. His jump shot has really been there. It's been inconsistent at times, but that's because the Jazz really didn't have any other creators for a while, even though, Conley was there. Mitchell was really that guy. Here he has Darius Garland, who's just so good. And now they have Mitchell. He's just going to score and score. He's going to have no pressure on him to really carry a team like he did for the Jazz with how inept Rudy Gobert was offensively. Now, defensively, you could say this is questionable. Now you have 2 6'1", 6'2" guards as your starting backcourt. But with the presence of Mobley and Allen behind you, I think, it's the perfect roster for having a backcourt like this. Isaac Okoro, he really needs to develop. So the starting lineup for the Cavs this year, most likely, ideally, is going to be Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Now they really need Okoro to be that just 3-and-D guy they really thought they were getting coming into the 2020 NBA draft. I don't know if they're going to get that from him. He missed a lot of open threes last year, but if he can live up to his defensive potential, which he already has to an extent, and hit those wide open threes, that's a fearsome starting five in my opinion. Now, giving up a lot of draft equity always hurts. As a Hawks fan, we gave up a lot for DeJounte Murray, but I think in today's NBA, it's just so competitive, you have to stand out in some way. I mean, think about it. In the East, I think Milwaukee, Boston, arguably Philadelphia are all better than the Cavs. Then you have the Nets, who are always lurking with Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, and Kyrie Irving. You have the Toronto Raptors, you have the Heat, you have the Hawks, of course. There's just so many good teams in the East right now that the Cavs thought this is their chance to make their move, and then they got Donovan Mitchell. They essentially just gave up Markkanen for Mitchell because Sexton and Agbaji was a rookie and Sexton didn't play last year. But overall, I think this is a great fit for the Cavs. The defense, hopefully, I think Donovan Mitchell can live up to his defensive potential. He's a massive wingspan for his size, so if he can be a bit more, he can gamble a bit more knowing he has guys like Mobley and Allen behind him. And I think he'll just like buy into his role as a secondary ball creator, so he'll be able to expend more energy on the defensive end. So overall, this was a really good move by the Cavs. Again, another only issue that can be presented in the future is that Mitchell might not want to re-sign in a city like Cleveland. He has loved New York for a while. He has a good relationship with Leon Rose, who is the GM and president of the Knicks. So it could be interesting to see if things don't go well. There's injuries in Cleveland. He doesn't want to re-sign. But for these next 2-3 years, the Cavs are going to win a lot of games, and it's going to be really interesting to watch them this year. Now the other team in this trade, the Utah Jazz. They've blown it up. Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell was their core duo who they thought could eventually lead them to the championship, built around them by acquiring guys like Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson. It never worked. Gobert wasn't too good offensively. There never was a good relationship between Mitchell and Gobert after the whole COVID dilemma. And it just wasn't going to work. So they got Danny Ainge, who orchestrated the wonderful rebuild that happened in Boston. And he's doing the same thing in Utah. In the last 2 months, they've acquired 12 draft picks. 12. Think about that. They have 4 unprotected firsts from the Timberwolves, 3 pick swaps from the Timberwolves in the Gobert trade. Now they have 3 unprotected firsts from the Cavs and 2 pick swaps as well from the Cavs. That's like Sam Presti at OKC level, just acquiring picks. And you know what? I think this was honestly a better trade for the Jazz than it was for the Cavs. The only way to restart in the NBA for a franchise like them, like the Cavs did, was just losing, getting young talent, and just like figuring your way out with draft picks. And the Utah Jazz are in a perfect position to do that. These picks might not be too valuable, but their own picks are going to be valuable. You can trade up, It's like, I just think they're in a great position to restart after what had been a successful regular season period for them, but they were never able to show that success in the playoffs. Now they have intriguing young players, and obviously Colin Sexton, who they locked up on a 4-year, $72 million extension as soon as he was traded. Lauri Markkanen's getting up there, but, I don't think he's going to stay for a while. They're definitely going to flip him for another pick. Ochai Agbaji is a guy I wanted the Hawks to draft. He is so good. He's going to be a great 3-and-D player, a great role player for a team like the Jazz. So I think that's a great move for them as well. In the Timberwolves trade, they acquired guys like Jared Vanderbilt, who I think is a great guy. I mean, he can't shoot, but he's an undersized big man. But I'm a big fan of those guys who can just really grab rebounds, defend at a high level at multiple positions. So I think that was a good move. Walker Kessler was another guy. Taylor Horton-Tucker is the guy they got in the Pat Bev deal. Or not the Pat Bev deal, sorry. They got Taylor Horton-Tucker in another deal. It's just like, there's so many things that the Jazz have done in these last few weeks to acquire this young talent and young draft equity that's going to be so fruitful for them in the future. I think they're in the Wembanyama sweepstakes for sure. And people are so focused on Wembanyama. There are other great guys in this draft, like Scoot Henderson, who's a guy I've loved in the G League Ignite for the last year. He's gonna be great. So with all the focus on Wembanyama, he's really gonna show out this year in the G League. I believe it. So honestly, this was a great move for the Jazz. Danny Ainge is doing a great job, and again, acquiring draft equity, acquiring young, intriguing prospects who could eventually develop into something. And honestly, for now, they just want to lose games so that they can get those great high draft picks. And I'm really intrigued to see this Jazz team in the next couple of years. I think they're gonna obviously tank a lot in comparison to the last few years, but I think the come up is going to be much faster than anyone is expecting. Finally, we have the third team in this trade, the New York Knicks. They didn't acquire anyone. They weren't a part of this deal at all, but they were the favorites to get Donovan Mitchell ever since literally half of their front office showed up to game one of the Jazz Mavericks series to really just like tell everyone in a way that they're going for Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. Of course, they got Brunson, but they didn't end up with Mitchell. Actually, Woj, right after this trade happened between the Cavs and the Jazz, tweeted that the Knicks offered R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, and 3 first-round picks for Mitchell back at the start of July. And honestly, I think it's a good thing that they didn't get him with that trade. I'm a big fan of R.J. Barrett. I have a friend who's a Knicks fan. His name's Kyle. Big R.J. Barrett fan, and he's made me into a believer too. But I think that the Knicks are much better off with keeping Barrett, keeping Toppin, and just going with this youth movement. I think obviously they extended Randall and like kept him. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm a big fan of Brunson. He's an alumni of my high school, so I have to cheer him on. But he's actually a really good player. Barrett's great. They got guys like Quentin Grimes. Obi Toppin's great. Mitchell Robinson they extended. I think by acquiring Mitchell in that trade, they would have just been like perennial 6th seed contenders. And while Knicks fans, they got the playoffs not last season, but the season before that, I don't think they would have been happy with perennial 6th seed contenders. I think they need to just wait it out, get another good draft pick, try and build around the youth, Barrett, get another guy with Barrett. I think Barrett's a solid cornerstone for them. Obviously not a number 1 option, but he can definitely be a number 2 or 3 on a championship team. Brunson's going to be great. I think the Knicks were much better off not getting Mitchell because they would have just been stuck in this purgatory of barely making the playoffs, losing in the first round to a team like Milwaukee or Boston, and it just would have been unfortunate for them. So overall, I think with the way things have played out in this long couple of months of Donovan Mitchell not knowing what's going to happen, I think the Cavs ended up well. They got their guy. They're going to win a lot of games this year. The Jazz got their picks. They're restarting. I think they're in a good spot right now to really take off in 3 or 4 years. And the Knicks, they're not going to be good this year, but I think it's going to be worth the wait by getting a good draft pick and hopefully hitting on that pick and then building around guys like Barrett, Toppin, and arguably Brunson. So overall, very interesting trade. I think it was a win-win-win. I'm including the Knicks in this because of how involved they were in the Mitchell sweepstakes. And overall, I'm excited to see how, the East is just insane with how much talent there is. So I'm scared as a Hawks fan. I don't think we're going to do that well. That's probably going to be my next video, just laying out the Eastern Conference now that the dust has settled with Mitchell. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this channel develops too. I'll be uploading more. Maybe in 2 weeks, my next video will be from my dorm room. So we'll see. But thank you for sticking with me and thank you for supporting me and trying to get me back to upload. There are a few of you guys who really, let me know that I haven't been uploading, but I really appreciated it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of the NBA, the week that was. See ya.